I was recording a bunch of different things yesterday when I looked super cute, and I knew I missed something, but I couldn't remember what I forgot, so I just kind of let it go. So unfortunately, you get 2 days crusty, Jessi. Hi, it's Jessi, and this is part 2 of my Deadhouse Gates reading diary. If you haven't seen part 1, it'll be linked up above, so make sure you check that out so you know what my thoughts are so far. If you haven't been following this series, check the description for a link for the whole playlist of my Malazan reactions. I am a first-time reader. This video will be spoilers through whatever I have read, and this will be for book 2 of Deadhouse Gates. Go ahead while you're here. I'm going to start saying this at the top of the video. Make sure you subscribe so you can see all of these as they come out. And give the video a like so that you can show some support so I can keep this series going. Alright? Go ahead and let's jump into the... Let's just get to it. I am unapologetically feeling far too lazy to get up and go film in front of my bookshelf. I've just finished chapter 6 of Deadhouse Gates. I would try not to update literally every chapter, but when the chapter is literally this long, like, that's 50 pages. The audiobook was 2 hours. I just read a novella this morning that was that long. Regardless, look, chapters don't all have to be like 10 pages long, but like if you're gonna write a 50-page chapter, there better be a reason for it, and this could have been broken up so many times. I'm sorry. It's like TV. If you're gonna write a 2.5 hour long episode, there better dang well be a reason for it. Anyway. So, thoughts. So we're starting with Felison with, what's his name? Benneth. The first thing I note is that spinning dagger, he's like playing with his dagger, it spins and it lands on him and then he puts it away. And I was like, that's an omen, right? Like, he's gonna die. And obviously, he did. Or seems to have. It depends on whether or not we want to trust, what's his name. Although, I really do not entirely understand Felison's, how do I put it, her loyalty to Benneth. I think there's like an element of, I don't know if Stockholm is the right word, but there's definitely an element of like, he saved me and I owe him something there that definitely needs to be unpacked at some point. Like, this girl, anyway. The next note, it's absolutely unbelievable to me that Haboric thought Felison was happy while at Skullcap. Like, she asks him why he hadn't planned for her to escape with him, and he's like, I thought you were happy here, or whatever. Like, no, she's still a slave. Just because she's a slave that's treated slightly better because she's banging her master, like, dude, she did what she had to do to survive. And then on top of it, she's like making herself numb with drugs in order to handle it mentally. Like, now obviously there was some sort of time jump between the end of book 1 and book 2, within Deadhouse Gates, between part 1 and part 2. But like the last scene we see of Haboric and Felison interacting is her literally, nearly beaten to death by Benneth. And, like, him being, like, she's, like, needing her, like, Haboric, you idiot, you're so busy slut-shaming her you can't even acknowledge that she's miserable. I just, Haboric, I hate this guy. I really do. I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't hate him to start, but the more he interacts with Felison, the more I hate him. He's just so sanctimonious and, annoying. So then we skip to Diker and Culp. Diker and Culp are still, of all the stories, my least favorite. More on that in a minute. But Culp's actually kind of witty. He entertains me. We meet this guy, Stormy. I don't know if we're supposed to know who Stormy is, if maybe he's somebody we've met already that's going by a different name. I'm curious about him. I like the name Stormy, too. Then there's the Lady Mage. My initial thought was like, is this maybe Tattersale? Or Tattersale's resurrection, child. More likely I was thinking it's Shaik, But then later we get confirmation from Puss that Shaik hasn't been resurrected yet. So I guess our most likely situation is that it's just some random lady mage we haven't met yet. I think one of the reasons Diker's perspective aren't as interesting to me, don't engage me so much, is that they don't really have anything they're rooting for or against. Like, Diker is just there to record everything, so his sections read almost like a history book. It's just like, this is what happened. There's just, like, it's so impersonal. And, like, there's this scene where he comes across, like, this massacre, and there's horrific things happening. It reminds me almost like that one scene in the Poppy War, right? And that scene in the Poppy War is absolutely horrific, and you feel this visceral discomfort and anger, and he's coming across similar atrocities, and you're just like, well, this sucks. Like, in an abstract way, obviously, it's awful. But, like, in the concrete, like, feeling, I'm just, you don't get anything there. So there's something about Diker's perspective that's just very blah to me. Then we got, we got to see my boy Puss. He almost got killed because he's being his goofy self. Love him. And then we end up with our buddies from the last book. We get a little bit of what's going on with Fiddler and them, and then we get, a quick shot of Kalam, who is, I don't know, I like his demon horse buddy. I'm having so much trouble picturing this thing because it's a 3-legged, like, skeletal horse, right? And I'm just like, I cannot, I guess it's just because everything in nature is symmetric to an extent. Obviously not perfectly symmetrical, but everything we have is designed to have two, everything to be working in pairs. So the idea of this, like, 3-legged horse is just impossible for me to picture. But anyway, I think Kalam should trust him more because I like it. Those are my thoughts now. Hopefully next time I'll have read more chapters. We'll see. We'll see when it feels right to update you again. Also, to just quickly add, Kalam breaking his knife, there is something about that I love. So I don't know if I understand Kalam's character enough. Let me put this down so it's not shaking as much. To really understand what his split loyalties are. I guess they're, like, split between the people of the desert, right? Shaik's people, the people that are following the whirlwind, and Malazan, I think, are split loyalties, right? And, like, they're aligned nicely because he hates, what's her name? Whose name is not coming to me? The Empress. Lasine. He hates Lasine, so, like, trying to claim. Anyway, I love, my favorite thing ever is a nice symbolic haircutting, and this feels very similar, like a forcefully symbolic knife breaking. Love that. Love me a symbolic knife breaking. It has been a while since we last talked, like a week and a half, and I haven't really been reading Deadhouse Gates in that time. I'm being honest with you. It's nothing on Malazan itself. I struggle with epic fantasy, and I find myself very often, I'll put it down and just kind of not think about it for a while, or I'll think about it, I'll be like, oh, I should read that, and just dread picking it up. Now, to be specific to Malazan, I think a large part of that problem is that the chapters always start, or at least these two chapters, I read chapters 7 and 8, start with, what's his name's? Diker's point of view. And I just have so little interest in Diker's perspective, so little interest in Diker. It's literally, my first note here is yada, 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 war stuff. Like, it's the part of the story that's the least interesting to me. So, like, even if I am tempted to pick it up, I pick it up and I zone out so quickly. But then I get into it and I enjoy it. I read 2 chapters and I sit down and just have a good time with it. So it's just something, it's like a mental block I have to get over, where it's like, if I put it down, it takes me forever to pick it back up. I have a lot of notes here. Let's just go through my notes. So, Felicen. I don't understand her loyalty to Benneth. I know she's very traumatized. There's a lot going on. All I can think is that it's almost like a Stockholm Syndrome thing, that he's somebody she views as having helped her, so she owes him or something. But like the way she comes out of the mines or Skullcap feeling so loyal to Bennett and hating Bowden and it starts with an H. What's his name? Haboric so much, like it's just very frustrating to read. And while I can kind of understand it to some extent, and they are certainly not helping anything, she just is very frustrating to read. There's something almost, I don't want to say selfish. I don't think she's quite selfish. Self-centered maybe, although that's not quite it either. She just very much seems to think she matters more than either Haboric or Bowden does. And like, there's moments where you think she's being selfless. Like the fact that her initial survival instinct, right? I'm going to sleep with Bennett and whoever he wants me to sleep with because it's going to keep me alive. But in doing so, she also tried to get the best for her friends, right? And we'll talk about that in a moment. And there's like a selflessness seeming in that act, but then she keeps holding it over them. So it feels less like she's actually being selfless and more she wants to be seen as doing something for them, you know? So they owe her almost. And it's just very much like, not to give Bowden too much credit, the fact that he sees her as like, you're just a spoiled noblewoman that just cares about herself, she really does come across that way. Now, like I said, Haboric and Bowden aren't helping. They clearly don't care about her. They clearly don't respect her. I mean, she doesn't open her mouth without Haboric making some comment insulting her. He sees her as just a child, which she clearly is not anymore. Like, yes, there is a naivety to her almost still, but like, you gotta trust her a little bit. Like, they're not telling her anything, which comes into like, she slept with Bennett, yes, for her own survival, but also to help Bowden and Haboric have a better time. And it turns out he wasn't actually doing that. And why didn't Bowden at any point say that? Like, they just kind of shamed her for her choices and at no point said like, hey, we're not getting out of it what you think we're getting out of it. Like, it's just, it's a lot. Let me just see if there's anything else. Yeah, I still like Felicen. There's something kind of witty about her. She's very jaded, which is definitely an element of her character, but there's also something almost clever about her that I really wish we got to see a little bit more, because like I said, I'm just getting frustrated. And I'm just gonna mention Bowden right now. Bowden is frustrating to me because I almost like him, and I was actually like on the verge of liking him until he took advantage of, I don't know if took advantage of Felicen is the right term, till he and Felicen had sex. And I don't know how to like, she was doing it to kill him. He knew she was doing it to kill him, but he did it anyway. And it's like, and he did it kind of almost to teach her a lesson, which is gross. I don't know. But like, the thing with him is that like, he's got this line of like, he's very self-serving and he cares about himself, but there is a kernel of doing the right thing. Like in chapter 8, when he saves Truth, you know, like, he's a good guy. He doesn't want to admit it, and there's definitely a backstory there. I can see him being very much doing a lot of not doing the wrong things for the right reasons, being pushed to do the wrong thing and then embracing it, you know? There's just something in that character, and honestly, the dynamic between Bowden and Felicen has so much potential, and there's almost like in a different world, in a different story, I would be shipping them, you know? Like, but it's just twisted in this way that's just, it's frustrating, you know? But I kind of like Bowden. I shouldn't, should I? I should hate him. But I kind of like him. I really, really enjoy the dynamic between Mappo and Ikariam. They just got good vibes, you know? But obviously Mappo, I don't know what his goal is. There's been like talk about it, but it's like a lot of words that don't make sense to me if I'm being entirely honest. But he's going to betray this man, and I'm not here for it. Like, Mappo is definitely he's using Ikariam for something and definitely going to betray him in some way or use him and abandon him in some way. And I am just not here for it. It's gonna break me. Calivan and Dancer, I think they've made it very clear, are two different people now, so I'm much, much more confused about that previous excerpt about him talking about one of them is possessing or was possessing Absalar, I really don't understand what's going on with that. So, Gessler and Stormy. I just, yeah, alright, I ship it. Whatever. You can, oh, long cold campaign, no women around me as much as you want. I know what's going on with the two of them. So one of the things that I rarely talk about the plot, I end up talking about the characters a lot. I think I'm very much a character-focused reader that, like, obviously there still needs to be a good story, but especially in books like this where the story is like, ooh, war and maybe apocalypse. Like, there is a story, but it gets kind of buried in the characters for me. Anyway, but this whole them going into the Warren on the ship thing, and the ship that's piloted by, like, headless corpses, it's creepy as hell, and I'm so into it. Like, it's really cool. Really cool. And then just my final thought here. I really love Iskaral Pust, and I'm so happy that we get to see new people react to him. Like Fiddler and Iskaral Pust. Man, I love it. I love Iskaral Pust. Alright. I should be going to bed, but I wanted to get this recorded so that I can read the book on the train ride here. I have now finished book 2 in Deadhouse Gates. So I'm here to talk about it. The end, my last thoughts on it. First off, I want to clarify that I now have learned that what's his name is, like, much older than I thought. I thought he was, like, maybe 20. But no, he's, like, much, much older than Felicin. So whatever I said about shipping them, just forget it. Pretend it didn't happen. I really thought he was, like, 20. Yeah. So there's that. I'm really bad at fantasy ages. So there's this lady that, like, casually moves between the horses in the middle of the fight against, who was that with? Was that with the assassin guy? Kalam. That lady, hot. I don't know who she is, but I'm into her. Like, jumping off of one horse onto another, great move. I am a little confused about how, like, everybody knows who everybody is. Like, Kalam hears this name. Like, it's just a random name. As far as I know, it's not a name me, the reader, has heard before, but he just immediately knows, like, name. Gets a name, and he's like, oh, that's so-and-so from such and such. He's ranked yada yada. Yeah, like, well, Captain so-and-so of this unit in this army. Like, it's really weird. I have a moment of Gessler trying to offer himself when he thinks that Stormy is going to sacrifice himself. Total boyfriend move. I feel like Diker's point of view is supposed to in some way build sympathy for the Malazans, but, like, when literally everybody on this countryside, every peasant, farmer, and villager in the entire country is joining up to fight against you, feels like there's a pretty good indication that you're the bad guy. And I had a note here about, like, the refugee situation not being great, but then we find out later, like, all the refugees are just, like, spoiled, rich, noble jerks. So, like, I don't know, are we supposed to be conflicted about this? Like, are we supposed to think maybe the Malazans don't deserve this revolution to happen? Because really it feels like they've earned it. I write these notes, like, as I'm reading, and they're so witty in the moment, but then for me to be like, I have to read this completely out of context later. So just gonna read this completely out of context. Sorry, Steve, but ghosts aren't gonna make me like Diker's point of view anymore. Like, Erikson adds this cool ghosty thing. It doesn't really work. Honestly, so, like, there's this whole sequence of this, like, battle. They're, like, fording a stream, and ghosts are involved in somehow, and then there's, like, a bridge being built and something with rushing water. Here's what I thought as I read that scene, as that whole sequence happened. I have literally no idea what is going on. And this would be so much better in the Dandelion Dynasty. Because in the Dandelion Dynasty, you'd be building up to it. And there'd be probably around the time, like, the wave comes through, or when Diker realizes they're walking along a, like, stone bridge that the engineers built, we would get a cool flashback to them planning that out, and all the pieces that had to fit together to make it go just right. And I would know exactly what had happened. I have no idea what happened. I'm so confused. There's like, they're crossing the bridge. Why did they cross and then cross back? I have no idea what happens in that entire sequence. I think there were ghosts. It's pretty neat. There's a really cool sequence about like mourning being a universal thing that like everybody experiences, and Diker kind of focuses on that. And then we find out that Coltane is like taking that away from his followers, that like they're not allowed to mourn, and it's really kind of shocking. Like, it's a really well built up moment where you're like, wait, why would he do that? And it's got to be set up for something, like some plan he has. My two ideas right now is for him that it's either him trying to dehumanize his followers, like if they aren't mourning, then death doesn't mean as much to them and they don't feel remorse at killing. Or maybe there's nothing to mourn and the dead aren't going to stay dead. Both ideas intrigue me. Too bad I have to read it all from Diker's point of view, and I just don't care. Anyway, that's the end of this part. No big moments to talk about. I'll catch you in part 3. Make sure you subscribe so you know when it comes out. Anything else? These should be coming out every 2 weeks on Sundays, I think. Anything else? Nope. Love y'all. Bye.